Alright, part 2 on this AOD assembly. Alright, so one of the things I like to do to this unit, this is a stub shaft. AOD did not normally have a stub shaft. So that just slips in there like that. You don't want to forget that. If you don't put that in, you won't have third and fourth. So I'm going to show you what I'm doing here on this unit. And this is typically what I like to do on all units. I very rarely build these stock. I like to put a one-piece input shaft in them. It improves the performance of this unit tremendously. The way they work is when you shift into third gear, they also lock out the converter at the same time. It puts a lot of load on the direct drum. It lugs the motor down. You know, another thing too with them, so the converter is locked up when it's in third and fourth. So what'll happen is sometimes when, say, you know, you're cruising and you're in overdrive and you start to come to a stop, sometimes the unit won't downshift soon enough, and it kind of hangs in third. And what happens is as you come to a stop, the car might kind of shake and vibrate and want to stall out the engine. That's all because we don't have control over lockup on the converter. So basically what it means is you're probably still in third gear. It hasn't downshifted yet. And it just, as you start to get to a slow enough speed, it's lugging up the motor, you know, just kind of like if you had a manual transmission car and you have it in third and you start stepping on the brakes and slowing down. When you get slow enough, it's like it's wanting to stall out the motor. So that can happen with these. A lot of people will feel this phenomenon, and it's annoying. But when you get rid of the lockup in this unit, it's a lot better, and you don't have to worry about that anymore. You know, this unit, in my opinion, is far superior. Once you do the one-piece shaft, it's far superior than a 700 R4. But I will say this. What I do like about the 700 R4, it actually has a lockup disc in the converter, and you can control that separately. That's the big downside on the AOD, in my opinion, is you have to lose your lockup to get performance out of this unit. Once you remove lockup, it's a very strong and reliable unit, but now you just don't have a lockup converter. There's really no way around that. 700 R4, you know, you GM guys are going to get mad at me, but it's not that strong of a unit, and even when you do all the stuff to it, they're not that great. I mean, I know, I understand. You know, some of you guys do a super job on them and they're hold up okay or whatever, but I'll put an AOD up against you any day of the week as far as reliability is concerned when it's properly built. But again, I will give you this. You got a lockup disc in your converter, and I like that a lot better than this setup. So anyways, next thing is we're going to put the forward drum in. So here is the one-piece shaft. It's no longer a split shaft. And I've already assembled the drum. So this can be a little tricky, and I might need both hands. You have to kind of work it around. What I do is I turn this shaft and I also turn the output shaft at the same time, so I can get this to engage. You have to engage all the clutch plates and the splines on the stub shaft and all that. So give me 1 second, let me get that done. Alright, so there it is. Takes a little experience to know when you're all the way in. If you just push down on this and just feel, you can kind of feel when you solid against the bearing. It's a little bit more stable. I mean, it's still gonna tilt, but because the bearing's a small diameter, but you get to know after a while. So that's seated all the way, I believe. Now, this is the other deal. The original one is thrown away. This is from AOD 4R70W. And it has the mechanical diode. And if you hear those clicks like a ratchet, that's what a mechanical diode is. Okay. Very important, spiral lock ring on here. If you put the snap ring on here, they're notorious for coming off. So spiral lock ring is important on this. The other thing we need, a lot of the original AODs just had a thrust washer. You can't do that anymore with this. You need the bearing. So let me go grab a bearing for that. Okay. Take the trans gel. Put a little bit on here, because that will hold the bearing in place for us. So there's the bearing that goes there. And that'll stay in place because I can flip this upside down. Now, another thing I can mention here. I put 4 plates in here. A lot of these only had 3. Not really a big deal. If it's just a, whatever, Mustang or something, street car, you don't really, this is just for reverse. Only works in reverse. You don't really need to worry about putting extra plates in here necessarily, but this one I just did. And I cut my own plate. You can buy a 4-plate pressure plate, which makes your life easier. I cut my own. Lets me set the clearance to the way I want. They don't really have much to set clearance in these. You can get different thickness snap ring on it, but you can't get different thickness steels and stuff for it. So they don't have a lot for that. But anyways, don't worry about the clearance in it too much. I don't like it too super loose on that one because of the wave spring that's in there. So this is just going to drop in. It's hard one-handed, but it's going to drop in, and then you just kind of, I'm going to need my other hand, of course. You just kind of rotate it around, but you got to hold the input shaft, or I should say rotate the input shaft. That helps. And here we go. We got a few engaged. I need my other hand. Sorry, guys. 1 second. It's amazing what 2 hands can do. Drop right in. So, the way to know you're all the way in, let's look down here. You can see through this window. See the tab sits just a little bit below the end of the sun shell there. Okay, so we know we're all the way engaged. That's important. Alright, next up is putting the overdrive band in, and then the overdrive servo. So let me go grab a band, get the servo ready, and all that fun stuff. Okay, so I pre-soaked the band and laid that in there. That's pretty simple. Just make sure you're going to engage on this pin here. Just make sure you send it up in there. And always pre-soak your clutches and bands. They don't have to be overnight necessarily, but just don't put them in dry. Alright, servo. Next is to put the servo in. I've already put the trans prep in there. So this is a factory A servo, and these are great. If you got one of those, you're in good shape. I never use the C servo. Those I throw away. Too small. The B servo, I use those are good, but here's the deal. It depends on your valve body. The way I do my valve bodies, they have a lot of pressure and they don't have the cutback. And in that case, the B works fine. A or B is fine. If you're not removing cutback and it's just more of a stock valve body, then you may want to consider one of the aftermarket billet servos, what they call an A+, which is a little bit bigger than the A servo. No real reason to run it with my valve body setup, but again, if it's more stockish valve body, I would strongly consider at that point going to a billet. So, okay. Spring. Again, you know, make sure your bore is not got burrs and things. Lubricated everything, new seals. Now, I put that in just a little bit. What you got to be careful of, if you can see down in here, here's the servo pin. The band is not engaged on it. So you need to take and get the band engaged on it like that. Okay? Hopefully you can see that. It just pushed the servo out a bit. That's okay, but we want to make sure we stay engaged on that band. Now, same gig as before. And I think this one's goofy. It doesn't really line up. I think it's here. I think it goes like this. So let me get this thing on. I'll show you. Then it's going to be the same as the rear. You're just going to compress it with your tool here and get your snap ring in. Same principle. So hang on. I'll be right back. I need my other hand. All right. Now, in this application, this compressor tool here doesn't line up in the center. Just really annoying, but I put the nut on here from the shift linkage and it hits on that, and that helps. It's goofy, but it works. I'm not super thrilled with it, but it gets the job done. So I've got that in. I put the snap ring in. And then again, you want to just double check. Make sure your pin is engaged here and that this loop of the band isn't stuck back in here. Now, there's a lot of talk about this, about adjusting this band clearance. I have found with the Borg-Warner band to generally be good. Using other bands, it's been really loose, and I've had to, you have to take your pin here and build it up with weld and then regrind it to make the pin longer, basically, so you don't have so much clearance. And this one here, it's not tight, but I wouldn't say it's too loose. And I'm sorry, this is a vague answer because I'm just going off experience here and what I think seems right and what's not. But do you really have to split hairs on it? No, I don't think so, in all honesty. I mean, the factory gave you no adjustment on this at all. And people have different methods of doing it, you know, shimming things, shimming the pin. There's a lot of different ways, but I typically find if I use a Borg-Warner band, I'm happy with it. Other bands, I have to weld up the pin or shim it. Sometimes I've done that. Okay. So let's, next up is to put the intermediate clutch in here. And I know I've got to gather all that stuff up. Now, AODs all had a 3-clutch pack. In a performance application like this, I'm going to go with 4. And one or two things you got to do. You either have to, you can buy a pressure plate from a 4R70W that will take 4. It's already modified. A lot of times, I mean, I have a lathe, so I machine my own. And I believe I don't have any spare 4R70W ones around to make it easy, so I believe that's what I am going to do, is machine one. So, alright, I'm going to have to do all that, and you don't have to watch me fiddle around with that for 20 minutes, so I got to do that, get the clearance right, get the right steels and frictions, and you've got different thickness frictions you can buy for this unit. You got different thickness steels you can buy for this unit to set your clearance. Again, clearance isn't real critical on it, so that's the good news. So you got a lot of variation there. But in any case, you know, it's got to be somewhat right, you know. So all right, let me go do all that, and then we'll talk about that some more. All right, guys, I'm back again. I screwed up a little bit, so I'm going to point that out. So I got factory A servo. It had a tighter spring. This is your C and B spring. The A had a little bit stiffer spring. So I took that back out because I got to put this one in. I spaced out there. Too busy thinking about the video, I guess. But anyways, you know, I don't know how much difference it makes, but the theory behind this is you got a bigger servo piston, so it's a little bit harder or slower to release it. So during a 4-3 downshift, it was supposed to help with tie up and things. So all right, I'm gonna put the right spring back in, and then I'll come back and we'll do that intermediate clutch pack. But I just wanted to tell you there that I screwed up. Okay, see you in a bit. Okay, got my servo spring swapped out. You guys like it when I screw up, don't you? I know you do. That's alright. Okay, so this pressure plate, you really can't screw this up. I mean, it only goes in one way, but you can kind of see there. And then just kind of typical stuff. So friction, steel, friction, steel, friction, steel, steel at the end. And then we'll check clearance. So let me grab my friction pack, get that set in, be right back. Alright, so there's the pack in there. Now, your clearance. Basically, if you measure from this surface down to the first steel, that's going to give you your clearance. And I've measured this, you know, using the dial caliper and, you know, the pin there, and just measure that depth. I got about 45 thou. That's good. This pack's not real critical, you know. Have at least 30. I don't know, you could have 60, 70, probably 80 in it. You know, it's not super critical as far as I know. I used to split hairs in this stuff, but once I really understood how it worked, and you know, you have to take into consideration how much travel the piston is allowed to travel, and all those kind of things. You have lots of piston travel on this. You don't have a timing issue. This is on the 1-2 shift, and this pack stays engaged 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So on the 1-2 shift, it just turns on, so there's no timing issue or anything. So clearance isn't all that critical. All right. So now we're ready to put the pump in. And yeah, I'm going to mention, okay, this one-piece shaft. So this forward drum with the one-piece shaft, loaded, ready to go. along with the stub shaft. And also I'm going to show you here, this is a replacement stator. This is a kit that we're now selling. Price on it, I believe, is going to be $380. And this will do all those upgrades for you. It's very easy to put in. You don't have to press the shaft in. You don't even have to build the drum. That's all done. Just replace your stator and put the stub shaft in. And you saw how easy that is. And that's it, man. It can't get any easier to do this upgrade. It also fixes an oiling issue where the converters would tend to balloon on these and things. So it relieves that, gives you a little bit better cooler and lube flow and all that stuff. So that's all kind of done for you. I've got Teflon rings on here. I like Teflon. It's okay if you use steel. If it's, you know, variable pressure kind of deal, which is most of your builds. But I like the Teflons. So this pump is all assembled and ready to go. Again, I didn't show you all that, but if you want to go over every piece of this, I really highly recommend you look up Ken Collins, Bad Shoe Productions. He's got a video on this. He'll walk you through every step. I don't think it does, like, it's not going to cover the modifications that I do, but if you want to see how the sub-assemblies go and, you know, using the lip seal installers and all that good stuff, that's a good basic build video. It'll show you all the detail you need if you're a beginner. I'm basically just kind of overviewing my build and showing modifications. Now, endplay on these. Ford's got this crazy tool that you measure and do some math and check it all out. I'm going to tell you right now, the number 3 selective almost always works. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this together and I'm going to check it. Again, endplay, not super duper critical, but we do want to check it. I don't want it too tight and I don't want it super loose. But we'll go over that in a second. So I got to put my gasket on here still, and I'll get this pump in, and then we'll take a look at that. And I guess we're going to have to do a part 3 on this video. So hang on one second. Okay, there's our pump in there. Now, this is important. I'm not a big torque guy. I'll be honest with you. I don't torque a lot of things, but these pump bolts I torque, and I like to go 200 to 220 inch-pounds. I try to torque them much more than that. It just tends to strip them out. But that seems to work well. Now, the endplay, sorry, not real scientific. I made sure the shaft will turn. I grabbed it with a pair of pliers and I just pulled up and down on it. You know, I'm pretty good at feeling clearance, you know, just something you develop over time, but this has probably got about 15 thou in it, which is perfect. You know, have at least 10. You don't want to ever zero clearance your endplay, because remember, this stuff's going to get hot, it's going to expand, and there's no real advantage to trying to zero clearance it. I don't see any advantage in that, but I think it's going to be pretty close to zero once it gets warm anyways. So I don't know, you know, just my opinion. I know some of you guys think differently on that, but whatever. You know, you could probably have 30 in here. You know, anything, I'd say 10 to 30 is great. 40 would probably be okay. But, you know, that's kind of getting loose. I wouldn't really go more than that. But, you know, typically, like I said, that number 3 selective washer or number 4 seems to pretty much nail it every time. And this particular unit You know, like a C4 and a C6, those are typically have a lot of endplay in them. They get loose over time, and at some point I'll show you the reason why that happens. It's not really the thrust washers wearing. Can be, but that's typically not the reason. This unit here, it's mostly bearings, or in this case almost all bearings except for the selective, and it doesn't have the same problem that C4 and C6 does. So typically, like, whatever the factory set it up with still works. You don't really have that change like you do in a C4, C6. So anyways, I guess, alright, we're at 25 minutes, so, man, I was hoping to do this all in one. I didn't think I was talking too much. I didn't tell any fish stories or anything either. Alright, we'll do a part 3, hopefully finish this bad boy up. Okay. Thanks for watching, and again, if you need to be breastfed on this, I'm not going to do it. Just get a Ken Collins bad shoe video. That'll breastfeed you through this whole thing. They're pretty cheap. I don't know, $35 or something, you know. By today's standards, that's like, you know, practically for free, right? It's as much as everything costs. So anyways, hope to see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.